My name is Jeff Schulte, here with Phil Herndon, and at points we'll be mixing it up with Todd Wermers as well. Sometimes three of us, sometimes two of us, probably never one of us. But I want to welcome you to the Return to Heart podcast. Return to Heart, we're going to develop what that means over all the sessions ahead. What's it mean for us to return to heart? That idea there is that we have a heart. There's something going on in this part of us, the chest part of us, our insides, deep insides. But a lot of times we learn to live above the neck, up in our heads, trying to figure stuff out, trying to survive with life. And we're going to try to get to some of the more, I would just say, the richer, deeper parts of how to live. I think, so many podcasts out there anyway. And I'm thinking, well, why do another podcast? Like, does the world need another podcast? Does the world need some more talking heads? And you need to know, we don't think the world needs more talking heads. We do think the world needs people that can bring life from their chest. And that's what we're going to do on the podcast, and that's what we're going to help you do. And when we talk about returning to heart, I would say I'm not going to do this with Phil sitting here, but if you imagined us trying to be in relationship head to head, put our heads forehead next to forehead, and try to connect at an intellectual level, we would call that a relationship, but there'd be no real intimacy.
Yeah.
And if I wanted to do relationship with you, Phil, I would probably be chest to chest, heart to heart, that something's going to be communicated from a deep place in me if I want real intimacy with you. Mm-hmm. And I know in my own life, and I think this is true for all of us, and this is why there's another podcast, and this is why we're doing this, is that we believe, and the reason we're doing this, I think God made us this way, is that we were made not just for relationships, but for relational connection. A lot of us are experiencing what one sociologist called crowded loneliness, that we're in a lot of relationships with very little intimacy.
Yeah.
And I think that part of return to heart is how do we return to some of the God-given tools that are in us that allow us to connect intimately, and Phil will talk about this in a minute, with Him and with each other. Because that relational connection and attachment and attunement and intimacy is our greatest need.
Yes.
It's not more money. It's not a better car. It's not a shirt that I like. It's me being connected and attached in intimate relationships with God and with others. And that is why we're doing this podcast. It's not to educate you. It's not to educate us. It's to help equip us to live differently. Mm-hmm. And it's changed us, and that's why we're doing this podcast. We don't want to just be a couple of talking heads.
Yes, that's right. You said a phrase, Jeff, it's real common. The phrase you used was God-given.
Yeah.
And one of the most valuable things God gave us is His image, the Imago Dei. So theologians call it that. So part of that Imago Dei is we can't help but move deeply, have this almost like emotional, spiritual inertia toward connection. And so we're made to connect with God for sure. And then God saw fit is His plan that we connect with other people deeply. And so part of what we want to do here with the listeners and viewers of the podcast is help them, help people not know as much how to connect, but their need for it and the language around it. So that return to heart's a big deal around that.
How many times are we told, well, this is what you just need to go do?
Yeah.
And we walk out of a situation, a conversation, a church service, a seminar, a conference, whatever, and we just walk out with all this stuff to do, but we don't have the tools to do it. And I go back to God-given tools. We do have the God-given tools. They're just atrophied. They're reactive. They're protected. They're hidden inside. Yeah. There's a reason they're hidden in there, and we want to help draw them out.
That's right. We often, it's super popular these days to use this phrase, to know your story.
Yeah.
And there are two ways of understanding know, and lots of folks have probably already know this, but two of the biblical words for knowing, one is to know information, and that's sadly what a lot of people get relegated to settling for. I know my story, I know the content, where I was born, what happened, who my parents are, did I play sports, did I do music, whatever. But there's another type of knowing, the Hebrew word is yada, it's experiential knowledge. And so we want to help people not just know stuff, mm-hmm. just know their story, but really feel what we call feel your story. Because part of that image that God put into us was this ability and a pull toward the feeling of my story, and to help identify, like this language we're going to talk about a lot, this feelings language, to identify what is going on in me as I return, and then who can I tell about that? That's relational connection you talked about. And then the exploration of that is me feeling and really deeply, experientially knowing my story. We want to help people do that.
And I would have said I knew my story because I rehearsed it and I could speak it and I could tell it like a narrative. But I don't think I knew the sadness of my story, the loneliness of my story, the hurt around my story, the shame around my story. I hadn't connected those things. There had been no marriage between the emotional part of me and that story. Now, there's a reason why all that happens. That's what this podcast is going to get into. But I got so good at telling my story, I was almost detached from it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until those things married each other that now not only did I know it, but I had my story. I saw how it affected me. I saw how something that was going on in my life when I was 8 has absolutely to do with how I'm dealing with my now 8-year-old.
That's right.
Or in a marriage of 38 years, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And man, that's the pay dirt to me.
That's
and
right.
I needed help getting there.
And as we get there, not when, but as we get there, we even begin to look at Scripture through a lens that's very different. For instance, a mentor of mine used to say, the Bible doesn't mean what it says, knowing content. The Bible means what it means. What does this mean? And you have these pictures. I recently taught out of Mark chapter 1 where Jesus, a leper, comes to him. Well, we know what it says. He touched him, he healed him, the leper was grateful, and off he went. But what that means is God came to earth and he touched the untouchable. That man hadn't been touched in perhaps years or decades. So what it means is this pathos-filled, passion-filled picture, this story of Jesus reaching out and touching someone that was as good as a corpse. So it means something deeper than just what the content says. And that's what we want to help people get to in their own stories.
Which is why someone listen to this podcast. This is why we're doing this, another podcast. You may learn some things, you may be educated a little bit, but if that's all that happens, then we miss the mark of what we're going to plan to do.
That's right.
And that we've already started to do. We've been doing this for over 20 years, but now we're just doing it on a podcast. It's helping walk people back into the part of that part of themselves to connect with God and others.
Yeah.
Now, I work in a lot personally in some areas of executive coaching and counseling, and in that whole world of trying to help people live better, perform better, function better, what they're finding is most of the coaching, that's a $1 billion industry, but most of that coaching they find is not very helpful because it just gives people a new trick they can do for a while that then when it doesn't work, they got to find something else. And this is amazing. All the research is showing that the only real help that's helpful, even for the executives kind of that I work with and the CEOs, the corner office guys, is in this area they're calling EQ, which is emotional awareness. Mm-hmm. Because it's really this, they're finding that unless I'm aware of myself emotionally, unless I'm inwardly aware, I cannot be outwardly focused. Now, where's the pay dirt for anybody, not just the executive trying to lead a company? It's this. We talk a lot about being present. This is a pet peeve of mine. We talk about being present like, man, I'm really present, which really means, man, I'm really paying attention, okay? And I sit with guys all the time, and I go, man, they think they're paying attention or being present. I'm going, if you don't know what you're feeling in this moment, you're not present at all. You're not.
That's right.
And unless you're emotionally aware of yourself, there's no room in you to be emotionally present with somebody else. Mm-hmm. And that's the other territory we want to get into. We're going to get to is that hopefully as you become more aware emotionally, personally with what's going on in you, your story, it's going to affect your relationship with your spouse if you're married, someone that you're dating, your children, people you work with, where it really, really matters to you. And that's really our objective in this podcast. And we're going to hit it different ways, different times. Hopefully it's going to be a benefit. Truthfully, I believe it. That's why I'm doing this. And I'm so excited about what we're doing.
Yeah, me too. So hope you'll join us. We are excited about doing it. It's just hard to believe in some ways that you and Todd and I even get to do it. So we hope you'll join us. Look forward to having you.
Welcome to the first episode of Return to Heart with Jeff Schulte, Todd Wermers, and Phil Herndon. In today's episode, you will hear the connection between emotional health and the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz. Let's get started.
It is almost surreal for me to be sitting here with you guys.
It's true.
When I think about what we're here to do, who we are to each other, what we've come to mean to each other, the roles that we played in each other's lives. You guys have played in my life. Let me speak to that. And I'm kind of going back to 20 years ago. Right now, 20 years ago, I was the lead pastor of a church that was doubling every year and it was exploding in all things outward. And inwardly, I was dying. And like many Christian leaders, I didn't know. I didn't know I needed help, but I was starting to realize I might need help.
Yeah.
Then, if I would have come to the point of knowing I needed help, and I think I was on my way there about this time 20 years ago, spring of 2005, then it's like, well, where do you get help? Because that's a really dangerous thing to do.
Right.
Golly, I think doctors and people in ministry have this occupational hazard where our personal lives absolutely have an impact on our private life, has a huge impact on our professional life. So that's the part of the fear about who do I ask for help? And then if I know I need help and I know where to get help, then the big question becomes, even do I have the resources to get it? Well, I was just inching up on I might start needing some help because my life was unraveling. And now here I am 20 years later with you guys. My life's not perfect. I'm still somewhat of a mess, but it has been an unbelievable journey of 20 years of recovering from what I was becoming, trying to survive, and recovering what I'd missed along the way with how I live. Man, here I'm with these two men, Todd with you and Phil with you, and I can't really believe now we're actually talking about this from a different place than I know I was 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's like here we are.
Here we are.
Like, what happened? How did we get here?
That's it. How did we get here? I got here by like falling on my face and having some guys pick me up.
Yeah.
And then a few years later, then I met you, Todd. But really, it was in that first year that I met you, Phil. Yeah. And man, I just got a lot of gratitude that now we get to talk about our stories, we can talk about how we got where we got, and how we've gotten where we've gotten, and the journeys we've had with other men and women along the way. The story of the Tin Man, which is hugely a part of my personal story, but now a part of a bigger story.
That's right.
We get to all start that today, which is pretty unbelievable.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah, this is we've talked about this before. Me and you, Todd, me and you, Jeff. I'm sure you two have, but this podcast is almost just a normal continuation of conversations we've been having for years. So that's a cool thing about podcasts. Like, they can be conversations and conversational. And for us, it's almost like, well, all we're doing is putting a mic and some cameras in the room, and we get to do what we've been doing for a long time together.
We just get to open the curtains so everyone can see what's behind the curtains. Okay, we've been having these conversations for a long time in different ways, and been dreaming of this moment for a long, long time.
Yeah.
I can remember meeting you, Phil, and then you 10 weeks later, Jeff, and if someone had said, hey, in 18 years, this is what you're going to do with these two guys, and you're going to help lead a ministry that goes and help people, I'd have been like, man, I don't see it. I don't know how that's possible. I don't know if I'll ever be back in ministry. And so fast forward 18 years and being with two of my mentors, two of my heroes, it's just an honor to sit and have learned so much from you two guys, and then now to get to go actually do it with you. It's one of the greatest honors and delights of my life. And, we started this conversation, you and me for sure, Jeff, with our team in the Tin Man office when we got a pretty nice grant to put together video and audio resources. And then a few years later pulled Phil into the mix, and we've been talking and dreaming about this very moment for at least 4 years together. And so finally for it to come to fruition, I woke up this morning and I had some anxiousness, some butterflies, like, man, like Christmas morning is here. Now what's going to come about? So it's an honor, it's a gift to get to do this. And it's really a gift to get to show our listeners and viewers what it's like to be behind the scenes at Tin Man.
Can I say for me too, the things we're going to talk about, where we're going to go with this, to me, almost to your point, Todd, feels like breathing. Mm-hmm. It's not going to happen to me. I don't have to manufacture anything. I don't have to go study anything. This has been 20 years of deeply personal work, deeply relational work, deeply therapeutic work, deeply pastoral work. And it's all kind of like coming to this intersection of having some of these out loud conversations in front of a microphone and a camera that we've been living for 20 years. And I want to say this, he called us mentors. I want to start back to saying where I was 20 years ago, part of where I ended up when I actually did fall on my face and did say I needed help, was that's what Phil, I want to say to anyone here at the beginning of our podcast, you came into my life and were part of helping scrape me up off the ground. Mm-hmm. And actually I found in the coming months after that, or the months subsequent to that, that at a time in my life that I thought my life was ending. It is literally ending. In the words of one of my mentors, Robert Lewis, he said, "You have no idea this yet, but your life is just beginning."
Yeah, prophetic.
Oh my goodness, he told me that. He said, "Your life's just beginning, Jeff. You're more dangerous than you've ever been." He said, "It's hard to kill a dead man. You've already been killed." But also this, you have nothing to prove, nothing to gain. And you have a lot more to offer than you ever knew you would. And then to move from your being a part of that beginning for me to Todd, our partnership in this that came later, and then full circle, and now partnership with you, Phil, and we're getting to work together. And somehow that almost is something that I was afraid to dream. Because I've never wanted to do anything alone. And certainly that's why there's not one of us sitting here behind a mic either.
Right.
I know we'll do this sometimes the three of us, sometimes two of us. But this is a great start. And I want to be able to talk about all that.
Yes. Which speaks to, the normal thing to do is to start a podcast series with, this is what we're doing it for, and hey, here's what we hope to accomplish, to tell the audience that is what. The cool thing is we're already doing that, because really what we want people to have is a view of these conversations that are hopefully helpful to them as well. And I mean, the thing is called return to heart. And so, that's we talk about that a lot in our personal lives and our families. And so the return to heart is really, I guess you would say, what we're after in doing this and what we've been doing together in different combinations through the years with each other. Sometimes me and Todd, me and you two together, but the end result, so to speak, from 20 years ago and 17, 18 years ago is this idea of returning to heart, and it is a 10-man podcast. So I want to go back to our question, like, how in the world did we get here to do this, and what is it we're after, so people can hear kind of that story?
Well, I think even when I go back to 20 years ago, the metaphor that's clear in my head about what I pictured what my life felt like was, when I talk about falling on my face, in some ways it looked like a splat on a windshield, but I don't want to also say it was worse than it was. It was also not good. But part of the more intuitive or a more tangible part was what I remember feeling was, it's like I saw myself as this water fountain that, by the very nature of who I was, that was supposed to give water, like I was supposed to produce water. And what I remember is looking at my wife and my children in particular, and I was watching them come to the fountain, and I watched them push the pedal on that water fountain, and I just knew I couldn't get any water to come out. And then I watched their frustration. Like literally, they were chomping that pedal, going, connect with me, attach to me, be present with me. Because I had all these great mentors, so I was doing all the right things that a dad is supposed to do that I'd learned to do, that I'd learned growing up to do, because I didn't see that growing up. We'll get to all that stuff, but eventually, but stuff that I had been mentored to do, but there was something that wouldn't come out of me. And we're going to talk a lot about this thing called attachment, connection, return to heart. I was so far from my heart that that's all they wanted from me, but I couldn't give it to them because I didn't know where I was on the inside. And I remember just trying to make this water come out. And I'm looking at them going, I'm sorry. Like, I don't know what's wrong with me. And the journey has been like I love this. I love how God made us this way. It's not been learning how to do something I was never made to do, but remembering what I forgot to do on my way to surviving when that water fountain got turned off to get through everything I needed to get through. And then watching that dry fountain become a trickle. You remember this.
Oh, yeah.
A trickle.
I do.
And then a little more water. And then maybe in some people's opinion, probably a fire hose, but maybe not a fire hose, but a lot of water. But now, like with my wife and kids and friends, and now in ministry, and in the work I do with professionals and what you guys do, and even Tin Man, I just go, it literally is a return to heart. And you guys got your own stories around that. I'm just telling some of mine. We'll be more detailed in future podcasts, but there's nothing we're going to talk about here that doesn't come from any of our personal stories. This is not an academic exercise or a textbook we're reading. I think it's highly biblical. It's highly human, how we're made. It's highly relational. And I do think, I don't want to presume this, but I think, I heard someone say to me 20 years ago, Jeff, when one man tells the truth about his life, he tells the truth about all men. Mm-hmm. We're all telling a similar story. And I think as we talk about our stories, other stories, and some ways in and out of it, I think it's going to be very, very helpful to people on this way. Otherwise, we wouldn't be wasting our time doing that.
That's right. Yeah, just sitting here thinking, for me, the journey of, 18 years ago, seeing Phil for the first time, 10 weeks after that, getting a phone call with you, Jeff, and leaving CPE, leaving treatment, going back to Southwest Florida and not having a job, cutting grass. I think what just resonates is sitting with two men that saw me, believed in me, and offered me hope in ways I never could see that myself. And I think that is the journey for me when I returned to heart. I did not do it alone. And, you'll share in a few minutes about the Tin Man story, in so many ways. You guys were Dorothy and Scarecrow and the Lion for me, because I was as lost as they could come. But having two men that really saw and believed in me and spoke life into me, I wouldn't be in this chair without you two men. And that's the hope for us here at Tin Man, is that every man and woman would find people that see them and believe in them, and will take them on that same journey to discover who they are. So, yeah, I'm overwhelmed with gratitude. This work of discovering my heart has impacted my family, my kids, and, Jenny, all that she's going through right now. Her gratitude for you two men in my life, I wouldn't be able to be present with her with what's going on without you two men. So, there's just a joy to sit and do this. And, I feel like a giddy schoolboy. I get to do it with two of my friends.
Hey, hit a couple... I'm acting like the host now. I'm not the host. But hit a couple, these are the kind of things we're going to be talking about. Just the bullets. Boom, boom, boom. These are things we think we'll hit. Something we don't even know yet. But these are things we're planning to talk about.
We want to talk about, pun intended, returning to heart, and different literal drawings, diagrams, stories, teachings around that, but mainly all of that in conversations around, we desire to be people of heart, we as in humans, men and women. We want to be men and women of heart, where we live out of that place of the Imago Dei. We're going to be talking about that for sure, real quickly, like our very next episode, about the Imago Dei, that God's breathed his image into us. And we're constantly dealing with this struggle. There's a struggle. There's a desire for connection. God breathed that into us. And then in our humanness, after Genesis 3 and after, there's a fear of rejection. And so where we lose heart is in that battle. I so desire to connect, and yet I so fear rejection. And that can create this wide gap between the two. And then we have this knowledge of God, our left brain data about him. And then we have this image of God so formed by our story. And so what we want to do, what we do at Tin Man every day in the trenches, and what we want to do in this podcast is to help people deal with those two issues together. The issue of the desire for connection and fear of rejection, the tightrope that is, and then the knowledge and data about God and the image of Him and experience of Him. We want to help people bring the delta between those two things really closer together.
Yeah, that's good,
by returning to heart.
That's really good.
Through conversations and teaching.
And I've heard you say, in some ways, I think in a unique way, what we even do with Tin Man is we bring things to the intersection of theology, Bible, psychology, kind of how we orient to the world, and then neurobiology, how we're made.
That's right.
And how those things impact. You just now mentioned one of them, how some of this impacts how I view God. I had a part of my story was, I had 2 seminary degrees. I'm, deeply discipled, theologically strong, and at some point, as much as I knew about God, as much as I knew about God in my head, when some things were starting to unravel in my life, and I could not navigate some things emotionally in my life. That all abandoned me. And what I actually believed about God based on where I came from that hadn't been dealt with took over. And then I got back to this, I'm performing. I can't turn this switch off on this toggle switch on my chest that won't turn off. Then in one sense, I want to just love God and follow Him and be obedient to Him and be used by Him. And another part of me that just cannot fail, is terrified of failure, can't tell the truth about myself most places. Because if someone really knew me, they'd leave me, that whole thing. And we're kind of trying to bring all that into one place. And for all of us, all 3 of us, former pastor, now licensed therapist, former pastor, now licensed therapist, current pastor, ministry leaders, like we're trying to bring all that together and very much intertwined in our own personal stories, because this is not theory to me at all, or to you guys. We wouldn't be doing this.
Jeff, would you you and I were on a call with that ministry a couple of weeks ago, Third Mill, and I think he talked about 3 things, if you remember those 3 things, Orthodoxy, Orthopraxy, and Orthopathos. I think those are the 3 things that, as we talk, but I love the way you give some explanation around those 3 things. If you would, because those are the 3 things, when I think about this podcast, we're going to bring those 3 pieces of the, 3 legs of the stool to our listeners. So would you expand on those 3 things a little bit?
There's 3 parts to categories for theology. There's orthodoxy, that's the what. Orthopraxy, that's the what we do. But then orthopathos is the emotional part of us that engages all of that. And it's the most neglected part of how any of us get trained, equipped, discipled, mentored. It's excluded from most of how we orient to any of our relationship with God or each other, when that's the part that leads us. We'll teach some of this, but how we're made is we feel before we think, and that's human. We'll talk so much about this in coming times doing this, but we are feeling creatures that actually try to make sense of what we're feeling about life that we're living. And yet, even I know for me as a young Christian, I thought that what I felt and the things that were going on inside me emotionally were the enemies of my faith, that the way to grow in Christ was to somehow be able to push that stuff down and push through it and deny it, which then actually just made me, it made me numb. And we'll talk about how to thaw in some of those ways, but we're going to try to bring that together. And, there's a lot of things I still love. I love theology. I love the scripture. I love to teach those things. I think I found myself at this time in my life in this place on the orthopathos, the emotional side, is because I think, and I've watched this even in my own experience, it's just been the most neglected part of how we're equipped and trained. I remember hitting that wall in 2005 and being pressed toward trying to wake up again to remember what I had going on inside me with what I was feeling. And I was so right-legged numb, so like oriented to my strengths, and so unable to pay attention to what was going on in my body and what I felt, that I remember even as I began to warm up to that, and then began to talk about it, even in some Christian circles, I remember it was kind of like, what? So you what? You know, and yet for me, I had several moments in the process for the first really 3 years of this journey for me where it was kind of like all this Bible that I knew and all this how to do it that I had learned. And then now the integration of, and I have feelings about my life that doesn't contradict those things. They actually, it's like what makes it all fire. Mm-hmm. And when that started to happen, and by the way, I was so careful, I didn't teach this anywhere.
Yeah.
Because I just wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted it for me.
Yeah.
And I remember just thinking, God, if you've just begun to help me see some of this internally, just for my own life, my marriage, my kids, and a few friends, that's enough. I do not have to talk about this anywhere.
Right.
And but then it started leaking out, and kind of here we are.
Yeah.
I think you agree with this statement. The greatest teacher on Orthopathy is sitting with us today.
Absolutely.
No doubt. Like
Absolutely.
the way that you, Phil Herndon,
yes,
have taken the Scripture, taken your lens of the Scripture, theological perspective of the Scripture, and your training around counseling. Man, for me, you are the single greatest teacher, and have taught me more ways and how to read the Bible from that lens than any professor I ever had at either school, Bible college, seminary, Trevecca. So just how did you get to that place?
Hang on a second. Okay.
Yeah.
What do you feel when he says that?
I knew you were going to ask me that. Just rampant fear, and then, what we will call, we'll talk about later, just toxic shame. Go, no, that couldn't be true. You don't know what you're talking about. You know who you're dealing with.
It's true, though.
I know. I know. Wait. Watch this. So you're saying this. I'm watching you kind of go away a little bit. Look at Phil over there. He's crawling. He went to crawl into that chair. Yeah. And yet, and that's why I interrupted you. And yet, I've been all over. I've been all over the country, and he's right about that. And I'm not putting you on a pedestal when I say it. I'm just going, it's a privilege. Mm-hmm. And every time you teach around this kind of stuff, I just go, where'd that come from?
Yeah.
And yet it all resonates with what I know to be true about the Scripture, and also what I've learned to be true about my insides. Mm-hmm. So you finish with you. I just thought I'm going away. I want you to come back in the chair and stay here with us, man.
I just want to know, like, how did you get to, you've got a different perspective on me and Jeff, because you were our therapist. So how did you get to that place of desire for God and desire of self? I just can't think of another person that's done it better than that. But so how did you get there? And then we'll give it over to Jeff to tell us, how did we get here?
How did we get here?
How did we actually get here as the Tin Man?
Well, I'll stave off my panic attack from what you said.
What we're confronting,
yes,
we
need to be confronted.
Toxic shame.
That's true.
Yes, that's de-shaming. We're going to do all of it.
It's coming up later.
Yeah. We'll do it in front of everybody too.
Clearly. I haven't asked that question before, not quite with the build-up y'all did. But I remember as a little boy, I would sit in church and I would make up stories about people sitting in the pews. I didn't know them from anybody. I've always been interested in how people tick and how they operate. And I don't remember ever reading Scripture outside of a paradigm of the story I was reading. Like I would read about the loaves and fishes, and I would wonder where that little boy came from. How did he end up going up there? I wonder what the look on Jesus' face was. And when Philip said what he said about it, I wonder what the boy was thinking, and then Andrew. So I don't have a memory of ever reading Scripture without thinking about and wondering what are those humans doing and feeling and thinking, and what were the look on people's faces, and I wonder if they gasped when he said that, or I wonder if they were mad, so I don't know if it's God's wiring. You guys know my story. We're going to talk a lot about story. Part of my story is having to be very careful about how I handled certain people, my mom in particular, at home because of her mental sickness. And so I was always very aware and always wondered from day one, what is the story behind her that's, I would say causing this? Like I always wondered. I would ask my grandparents, hey, what was called her Mom. Growing up in the South, she was Mama when I was little. What was Mama like? And I never really got answers. And later on, I looked back and thought, oh, they were hiding something. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's necessarily sinister, but they wouldn't answer my questions. I remember walking away. I'm talking 5 or 6 years old, frustrated. Like, I just want to know, like, was she like this when she was little? Or what was she like? So I've always wondered, I guess maybe the anthropology of the scriptures have always stood out to me even more than the theology. Like I remember reading about these people. And I remember thinking the first time I heard the message in Exodus 3 on the burning bush, I literally thought, I wonder how he told this story to his wife when this happened. Yeah. What did he tell her when he got home? Like, hey, sit down, honey. Like, I got to tell you something. And did she believe him? And then I've always wondered, what are the human responses going on, even when it's doctrine? Because I remember learning for the first time a pastor telling us, like, these are letters people read, like Ephesians or Galatians or Colossians. These are letters that are read in public. And I remember thinking, well, I wonder, as they're sitting there when they hear this from Paul, I wonder if Paul saw them do something. Always doing that. So I've always been drawn to that. I believe God, it was, and I'm not kidding when I say this, probably dissociation as a child, going back into these stories, but I've always been drawn into the great stories. Of course, the story as in, as our pages of Scripture. And I'm not doing this as an awkward segue. It truly is a very good segue to, I've had in my head, my heart, my mind that, okay, I know intuitively the story is right here. Genesis to Revelation, this is the story that is a template of all stories. And so it just so happens that our ministry that you founded, that you run, is called Tin Man, which is a famous story, but I don't know how many people know the backstory of that, the prequel. So if you would just take it from here, Jeff.
There's two backstories. There's the backstory, then there's Jeff's backstory.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Tell both. I'll tell both. So I'll tell my backstory first or the backstory? I'll tell the backstory first. So I actually got the book right here. Most people don't know. Most people are familiar with the Wizard of Oz. Okay, and the Tin Man is like one of the iconic characters. The Scarecrow, the Lion, the Tin Man, and Dorothy. And but they don't know that that's actually part of a book written by Frank Braun, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. And they just know this. They just know the Wizard of Oz part. They don't know the backstory's in here. Mm-hmm. And so I read this book, and the backstory's in here, and it tells how the Tin Man got where he got that time that the Scarecrow and Dorothy found him frozen on that little rise next to the yellow brick road. Mm-hmm. In fact, there's this great section in the front. The book is not well written, which is why the movie's great. The book's not. You've never heard the book. It's not very well written. Yeah. The book is not well written. But there's a great interchange, even in this, early on when the Tin Man and the Scarecrow are going back and forth, arguing what's better, to have a heart or a brain. You'd rather be smart or would you rather have a heart? Wow. They're going back and forth about what's more important. It's really kind of cool to read all that. But the book tells also, though, how the Tin Man got where he got. Now, this big backstory is on the way to find the wizard, they all were looking for something they wanted and they needed. Mm-hmm. Okay, Dorothy wanted to go home. Mm-hmm. The Scarecrow, he wanted a brain. The Lion wanted courage, mm-hmm. and the Tin Man wanted a heart. And when you watch the movie, when this excerpts from the book to the movie, what you see in the movie is the wizard didn't give any of them any of those things. Mm-hmm. They actually discovered that it was true about them all along, that they had become disconnected from that part of themselves. And on the way to find the wizard, they recovered themselves.
That just feels huge.
Returned to heart.
So good.
And so what happens there, the Scarecrow was smart, and the Lion showed great courage. Yeah. Now, at the beginning, he was very timid because he had convinced himself through some narrative, some life experience, that he was a coward. And somebody told the Scarecrow he was stupid. Mm-hmm. And so the Scarecrow wanted the wizard to make him smart. Anyway, so here you got this Tin Man. You go, how'd he get there? Well, the Tin Man was not a Tin Man. He was a woodsman. where he was a woodsman, like had an axe, and his job was to cut wood and to clear forests and to build things. And in the story, the woodsman falls in love with a munchkin girl. Remember the munchkins? We represent the lollipop kids. The whole thing. So he fell in love with one of those munchkin girls, and he wanted to marry her. Passionate for life with her, totally in love. Asked her to marry him. They're not married yet, but he commits to that. Goes and finds this forest. Gets out there. I'm going to clear a plot. I'm going to find a place for us to live. I'm going to build a house there. And with passion and dreams about the future, he goes out there and he starts cutting wood to build a life for him and this munchkin girl he wants to marry. Well, the munchkin girl's mother did not want her daughter to marry the woodsman. So she goes to the Wicked Witch and she says, I need you to put a stop to this. So in the story, the Wicked Witch curses the Tin Man's axe. Curses his axe. And so while the Tin Man's out there cutting these trees down to clear this clearing, to build this home, to create this life that he's passionate about, the axe is cursed now. So while he's swinging, he cuts off an arm. Okay, and obviously just as a book. But what happens is in the story, he cuts off an arm, and then he goes to the tinsmith to get it repaired, and the tinsmith gives him a metal arm. And then he goes back out in the woods. He starts cutting. The axe is still cursed. He cuts off the other arm. So now he's got two metal arms. Okay, and actually he doesn't mind it because he doesn't get as tired. Okay. Well, in the story, he ends up cutting up most of his body, and every time he loses a body part, he goes back to the tinsmith, and the tinsmith replaces the flesh with metal. And now he's become a machine. And the tinsmith says to him, you got to remember to take care of yourself. He said, you got to give him an oil can. He said, you got to do some self-care here because you can't just be out there. But now the Tin Man now is almost lost in the machine-like way that he can work. And man, that guy doesn't stop. And he doesn't stop cutting. And pretty soon while he's out there, he actually forgets why he's out there. Like he's become a cutting machine. And there's piles of wood everywhere. He's just cutting. Almost forgot about the munchkin girl. And he's pretty enamored by how productive he is and how much stuff he's getting done. Okay? So all that's happening, he's not taking care of himself either. And then it rains. And when it rains, he freezes, and then he rusts.
Yeah.
And then he sits there for who knows how long. And in The Wizard of Oz, what happens is, I think it's the Scarecrow and Dorothy. They haven't found the line yet, but they come across the Tin Man, and if you remember the movie, he's standing there, and he can't even hardly talk, but he can't move. And you hear, he said, and they get the oil can and they loosen up his jaw and he starts to talk, and then they loosen up some joints, then he falls off that little knoll, and they hit him on the chest, and there's nothing in there. So, man, I lost my heart.
Yeah.
Okay. And then obviously you find out later, he at one point in the movie, he starts to cry, and they all panic because they think he's going to rust again because he's so tenderhearted after all. Anyway, what you see in all circumstances is when he actually got to the wizard didn't give him a heart. He gave him a clock shaped like a heart that he hung on his chest that ticked like a clock to remind him that he had a heart and he'd had one the whole time. Mm-hmm. The Scarecrow got a diploma. He didn't get a brain. He got a diploma proving how smart he was. And the Lion got a medal of honor, a badge, a battle badge to say, look, you are a courageous warrior. And they could look down at that and remember who they were, but also who they'd always been and lost touch with. Now, here's what this gets curt to me. So in 2006, coming off a lot of personal work, a lot of the recovery we always kind of alluded to already. Again, I'm not going to unpack all this today for time. But what I remember probably never being more alive than I could ever remember being as an adult internally. Like all of a sudden coming out of the matrix and actually being aware of what I'm feeling, knowing how to see my kids more, connecting to Brenda in ways I hadn't. Even my relationship with God had changed dramatically.
I remember that.
And what I remember is, but also I had lost my job. And I remember I had to create an LLC. So that someone could pay me to do some consulting. And nobody was going to know the name of this, but I needed to name it something. for me. And this guy was going to write me checks for that LLC. That's how he's going to pay me. And I remember I'm standing at the Secretary of State's office all by myself. And I was down there having to do this as some of the consequences of living so long without heart. But now here I was, still alive inside, but like having to live with some of the consequences. But I remember sitting there going, what do I name this thing? Like Schulte LLC? I don't know, some stupid name. And then I thought, how did I get here? Like, how did I even get here? And it hit me. And even the metaphor of the Wizard of Oz hit me. And I thought, I'm the Tin Man. I got here because I had an axe in my hand. And I cut off half my body parts, and I became a machine. Mm-hmm. I cut down a ton of wood. I forgot why I was even cutting it down half the time. I didn't take care of myself. I rusted on a knoll. I needed someone to come do for me what I couldn't do for myself. Mm-hmm. That's where you were one of those guys. I was frozen, and I couldn't even hardly utter the words oil can. Mm-hmm. Barely, but I could utter them, and you heard them. Other guys did. And some other people helped me get my life back. And now here I am, more alive than I've ever been. I've got mentors telling me my life's not over, but I got to start this LLC. I don't know what to call it. And I knew what I was going to call it, and I called it Tin Man. It was called Tin Man Consulting LLC. So that was 20 years ago. Now, Tin Man Ministry didn't exist 20 years ago, but I can tell you 10 years ago, when this thing began to bubble up about, and we can talk about how the ministry started later, we'll talk about Tin Man Ministry, but I remember knowing immediately when we were going to do this, it seemed like God wanted us to create something that other people could get to walk the yellow brick road back to what they lost. Mm-hmm. With no grandiose plans about it, but just I'm going to go quietly go help guys. That's where it started. I'm just going to quietly. I remember thinking, well, I know exactly what I'm going to call it. It's Tin Man. And it's not because it's male, it's Tin Man because the metaphor is human. Yeah. That most of us get into life, children come into the world fully alive, fallen but fully alive, fully engaged. Technically can tell the inside, they bring their inside outside. They're not ashamed of their neediness. In fact, their neediness is what allows them to get the help they need. And somewhere along the line to survive, all that gets pushed down. We get out there with our axes, we start swinging them. We forget why we've been out there half the time, stop taking care of ourselves, and we end up frozen.
Yeah.
And that's my story, and I've convinced of this now. It's not just my story. It's the story of a whole lot of people on planet Earth. Mm-hmm. And the metaphor is rich. I think there's a lot of context to it. It's very personal to me because that was part of what I saw my story being. And so we just started the journey of helping other people get what they lost and not give them what they didn't have, but what they lost touch with. And so I love the name because it's personal, and that's the work that God did in my life, and he's still doing.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. I'm just thinking as we kind of start to wrap up this first kind of introduction to this whole thing, and it's like here's Todd Wermers, and I have plenty of time to unpack all of our stories later on, but here it's as the president of the organization, leader, strong, courageous, godly, and at one time a Tin Man. Mm-hmm. And there's a story you just told, and Jeff Schulte, chairman of the board, founder. There's Phil Herndon, clinical director, returned to heart back in Texas before I knew the two of you were alive or we knew each other were. And so we're just three men who have been given the stewardship of leadership over this organization named after this iconic character that comes from the big story that God in his providence saw this kid growing up kind of half Virginia, half Texas, Ohio, Georgia kid, growing up and going, there is a day coming to when this iconic character that's taken from capital S story is going to be iconic for these three, and the team that God has given them stewardship over to work with are going to be helping people literally return to heart, to be able to see what has always been true in them. So I'm just listening to the two of you and thinking like, gosh, I'm too young, thank the Lord, to be your dads, especially yours since you're older than me a little bit. But just to sit here and listen and go, what all God has been doing from before time began, but also in what we call real time to let us do this podcast together. So I just can't wait to see what happens in the future. Yeah. So and thank you for listening. Hope you will keep joining us. We're going to be publishing these, putting these out on a regular cycle. And so we're going to be mixing and matching, me and Todd and Jeff, me and Jeff. So we're going to be doing round robin. But the bottom line is we want to bring you, viewers and listeners, to a return to heart.
We will tell the truth about our insides.
Yeah.
Like you guys, you've heard me say this about 10 Men Forever. I said, we will practice with each other what we're trying to teach other people to practice.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to do that on this podcast. We will tell the truth. We'll bring our inside outside. I think we'll be deeply biblical. I think we'll be astutely informed about how God made us, because the God who made us is the God who made us. He made us a way. And we'll talk about that. And I'll tell you, everything I've ever done, I've always said, I don't want to ever create something or build something that I wouldn't want to be a part of myself. I don't want to create something to come to that I wouldn't want to go. And I can just tell you right now, I want to listen to these podcasts already, and we haven't even done them because I'm excited about what's going to come out, because I kind of know what's in here. Not just with me, I'm talking about you two.
Yeah.
So let's go.
Yeah, I'm really excited about where we're headed next. Where we're headed next, we're going to begin really how we all became the 10 Man or 10 Woman. And we call it the transformational process. And so our next episode is really getting back to what we have called the Imago Dei. Like, we all in us have been put, God's handprint on us. We've all been created in the image of God. And yet through this first really season is looking at how have we gotten so far away from how God created us and becoming 10 men. But, we will also give the hope of how do we return to what God had for us. And so I would just, to any listener that's listening to this podcast, is just say, just for a moment, when this ends, just write down your own story, how you became the 10 Man or 10 Woman. And we look forward to journeying with you to really get back to return to heart. So appreciate y'all listening, and we look forward to being on this journey with you.
You bet. 10men.org. We'll see you soon. Thanks for listening.
Thanks again for joining us on Return to Heart. To access resources mentioned on this program or to find out more about Tin Man Ministries, please go to tinman.org.